Welcome back to the channel. In this video we are going through an article that was written by Paul Tassi, who works for Forbes. And I've followed Paul Tassi for a little while now. I absolutely love some of the articles he writes. And this one is really interesting. It's about NFTs, you know, that really stupid thing that some CEOs want to bring into AAA titles. And what we're going to do is, in the background you see some Ghost Recon Breakpoint gameplay, because Ubisoft is the first company to start this all off in a big way, wind up a load of the gaming community, and then have a major fail with it. They made like $400 or something stupid from NFT sales, and they still want to carry on pushing for it, thinking gamers are going to warm to it, and it's going to become the norm. We as gamers need to stop that happening. I want to know your thoughts and opinions and stuff about this in the comments, so make sure you leave a comment and let me know exactly what you think about it. So, Paul Tassi's article. Yesterday, the gaming community collectively rioted about a love letter Square Enix president, Yosuke Matsuda, if that's how you say his name, wrote about the blockchain and NFTs, stating that both would be a key part of the company's strategy in the past year. And if you haven't heard anything about that, I actually went through it was a New Year's letter from the president. I went through it in a really aggressive tone because I'm sick and fucking tired of these CEOs being idiots. So that's in another video on the channel, a recent one. So NFTs invading traditional video games has been a burgeoning front in the war between gamers and publishers, though really, mostly the executives running those companies, as reportedly there's internal pushback on the idea of blockchain or NFT integration within some of these companies, like we saw with Ubisoft. As I've stated a few times now, the developers themselves have told the CEOs this is not a good idea, but the CEOs don't care because all they want is money. They think that by implementing NFTs, people are going to be hyped about it because it's a trending thing within the world, and they're going to make a load of money by sitting on their ass doing absolutely nothing. It's going to be self-sustainable, as stated by Yosuke Matsuda. It's going to grow the games, it's going to bring more creativity into them and motivation and things like that. And at the end of the day, money, money, money. But Ubisoft recently attempted to launch limited quantity NFTs in Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which was met with mass player outrage and no meaningful aftermarket sales. As I said, about $400 or $500, something stupid like that. Like roughly, or not even, a week's worth of wages for one person on minimum wage. But Stalker 2 was forced to cancel NFT-based promotion for the game after player pushback online. Everyone went mad and said, I'm not buying your game if you're going to put NFTs in. Despite this, Square Enix and no doubt other companies, EA, Activision, they're all going to jump in on it. They are pushing forward with NFTs in games and blockchain-based offerings. There's a refrain I keep hearing that this is inevitable for gaming, and even skeptical critics in the press are saying this sounds an awful lot like the whole Oblivion horse armor situation from ages ago. That was famously the first real introduction of post-launch microtransactions, where Bethesda charged extra money for armor to put on your horse in Oblivion, and it caused an explosion of outrage among fans. The idea is that though gamers were mad at first, over time this practice became accepted, and now almost all games have microtransactions or loot boxes and everything in between. The theory is that while NFTs are being implemented badly and are causing outrage now, that will fade in time. They want you to warm to the idea of it. I don't believe these are equivalent situations. Here's why. The arrival of Oblivion horse armor and the advent of post-launch DLC was something that could be seen as an immediate benefit to publishers and developers. One of two things was true. Either you could take something that might have been in the game to begin with and sell it separately, creating extra money from already completed work, or you could do some amount of extra work if the content wasn't planned for launch and still make a large deal of money proportionally to the hours invested. It was and has been a win-win for publishers and has helped offset the rising cost of game development and pad profits. This is not true with the idea of NFTs, at least not the way they keep being pitched. Some common benefits of NFTs that are extolled by the crypto faithful. Limited quantity items produced as NFTs allow players to feel special attachment to their gear. Players already feel attachment to their loot and collections in games, and issuing limited NFTs that can be snatched up and only transferred through sale destroys the motivation to acquire top-end loot in many game economies. And making that loot powerful, not just cosmetic, would be instant death for the concept, as even current microtransactions have learned not to go down that path. Yet most blockchain games are fine with selling power to the highest bidder, and if you do want to sell power and make money from digital items, those avenues are already there in mobile and gacha games. No blockchain required. And for those of you that don't know what a gacha game is, if I'm pronouncing that properly, it's basically a game that features toy vending machines or a mechanic, similar to loot boxes. So the next part of this article from Paul Tassi, limited quantity NFTs are a potentially great revenue generator for publishers. The idea that producing a unique item that only a few hundred or few thousand players have access to is not feasible in most games. There's an entire thread from a Bungie developer on this that talks about the process to make such an item, likely for a massive loss compared to a more traditional microtransaction. So this says, the proposals offered lately have no guarantee of return, no guarantee of security, so what happens when someone pulls, they stole my apes on people's in-game armor? I didn't even mention OPSEC and player security teams. There is nothing crypto or blockchain can bring to gaming that isn't already being done by existing established secure systems. And for every do your research, it's the future tweet, there are several tired developers rubbing their eyes. And then it says here, players want to play to earn and have their time investment rewarded through valuable NFTs or tokens. Turning your gaming time into a low-paying job has psychological effects on the player that these crypto advocates are not thinking through. We don't even need to imagine how this might feel, given that we already exist in a world of gold and item farming for cash. Those are not players, they are low-paid labourers experiencing the game in a way that no one wants to play. Gamified token generation is not the same thing as playing an actual video game. This idea leads to bizarrely tone-deaf statements like the one we got from Square Enix's Matsuda. And that statement says, or at least part of it, says advances in token economies will likely add further momentum to this trend of diversification. I see the play-to-earn concept that has people so excited as a prime example of this. I realise that some people who play to have fun and who currently form the majority of players have voiced their reservations toward these new trends, and understandably so. However, I believe that there will be a certain number of people whose motivation is to play to contribute, by which I mean to help make the game more exciting. And as I said in my previous video, play to contribute. You're playing to contribute to the publisher's pockets, to the CEO's pocket, so he can go out and get private islands, private yachts, private jets, choppers, all that sort of stuff. Whatever he wants, he can go buy it, because people are fucking stupid enough to purchase into these NFTs. And I mean, based on Ubisoft, not too many people, but it's the fact that there still are people. People grabbed hold of a gun skin or something like that in Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and they were trying to sell it into the hundreds of thousands of real life money. But after a couple of weeks, it turned out that they didn't even manage to shift like $500 worth of the stuff. But continuing with this article, and this is after the statement now, if you start to view playing to have fun as optional in your game in an effort to make it a revenue generator for both you and to a far lesser extent the player, things are not going to go how you think they will. So the next part is NFTs would allow items to be used across multiple games through consistent player ownership. This is one of those, has anyone here ever seen a video game before moments. The logistics of trying to create items that could be used across entirely different games is not remotely logistically possible outside of some 50 years from now vision of the metaverse that does not exist and will not exist for eons. I imagine it would be hard enough to transfer items even within the same publisher, so Ghost Recon Breakpoint items go to Far Cry, and forget about anything larger than that like taking Destiny armor sets into Fortnite or Call of Duty loadouts into Battlefield. It's utter nonsense, literally not anywhere close to being a reality. This is the flying car pitch of NFTs. And I mean, if you think about it, taking something from Ghost Recon Breakpoint to Far Cry isn't going to make sense at all anyway. But not only that, a lot of companies can't even put out crossplay, and that's just between different platforms on the same games. How are they going to do other shit like this? They're not. The next part of this says NFTs allow players to feel secure about actually owning their digital items. No, you don't, because you don't actually own them. If you read through Ubisoft's terms of service with their NFTs, they still own all of the rights outside of their own little metaverse, whatever you want to call it, their third-party marketplace and their company. If you try doing anything outside of it, you're going to get in trouble. You have to keep it within the company, so it's technically still not even yours, even if you paid for it. They still own the IP to the product. You're basically just borrowing it to try and shift it and make a bit of money for yourself. But it says here, if there's one thing I certainly do not associate with NFTs right now, is security. Given that every other day some story is trending on my timeline about someone's hacked wallet and losing access to their precious ape pictures, which requires the freezing of sales and recovery of assets to rectify. And I briefly mentioned this in my last video as well. In 20 years of gaming and building up inventories, I've never felt like my digital items were at risk of being stolen outside of someone hacking your account or somehow scamming you in game, or also developers fucking up to the point where your stuff goes missing randomly, which again is consistently happening in the NFT space too. I've lost items through tech glitches on occasion, but gear, loot, inventory restoration is a common practice in those situations. So there is actually a tweet that says stolen bored apes worth $1.9 million were frozen by the NFT marketplace OpenSea. So these things are being stolen because there's nowhere near enough security for them. And then it says NFTs give players intrinsic value in their collections. I've talked about why limited quantity NFTs don't make sense, so that just leaves non-limited quantity ones. But in that situation, that's effectively no different than the way things are now in games that have auction houses where you can buy and sell items for in-game or real-world money. Real-world money auction houses have in the past decimated game economies and player motivation so badly they had to be removed, and then Paul's put Diablo 3 in brackets. So I'm not sure this is the selling point it's believed to be, and there's no real justification for any of this to need the blockchain as an essential part of the process. I'm not saying the blockchain will never have any use at all in gaming, and sure, better ways of tracking digital ownership might be a reasonable thing to have in the future as more and more virtual spaces begin to connect to one another, and yet literally nothing about the current pitches to integrate NFTs in games feel like they are solving any immediate problem or providing any benefit to the publisher, developer or player. Instead, they are proposing environmentally questionable retreads of systems that already exist in games currently, or pitching ideas that are so ludicrously impractical they would be laughed out of any developer meeting. Sadly, those are meetings I imagine are currently happening between crypto-blinded executives and hapless devs trying to explain that no, we can't build NFT loot in our AAA shooter that will carry over into Roblox and Minecraft. If crypto enthusiasts actually care about adoption and not about making a quick buck, they need to back off when it comes to gaming with these absurd, almost insulting proposals that show how little they know about the reality of both playing and building games. If this is the future of gaming, someday the current situation is going to set it back for miles, and this slow burn horse armor implementation is going to feel like Raging Inferno that will wake the gamer hive every time it comes up for the indefinite future. I would not want to be the next studio or game that announces NFTs in the current landscape, and yet the executives living in this bubble sure are going to keep trying. And it's absolutely spot on. I absolutely love this article. I couldn't have worded it better myself. All these big higher ups in these companies are going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. The gamers are going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. It's just going to end up shit. There is one good thing, in my opinion, to come out of this, and that is the fact that AAA games will go so far downhill, indie games will push up. and they will push up and they will surface because people will go to those purely for the passion, time and effort that's gone into making the games. They will become a lot more popular because AAA will basically just become some whale marketplace for wankers that have far too much money to just go and trade different in-game items. The ones that have way more money than what they have sense. But that was a look at Paul Tassi's article for Forbes, Why Gaming NFTs Are Not Oblivion Horse Armor 2.0. And what we're going to do is leave the video there. Let me know your thoughts and stuff in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed it.